One of my favorite genres of films is romance. I unashamedly love dumb romantic comedies, but mainly from the 90s and early 2000s. They all follow the same format and are so easily predictable. I just love the idea of love. The whole idea of boy meets girl, boy falls for girl, is one we're all very familiar with in all forms of media. We've all been in that situation before, but a lot of times those stories end in a way that, in my opinion, goes against reality. Take Spider Man by Sam Raimi, for example. In all honesty, do you really think Mary Jane, the pretty girl next door, would choose Peter over Flash? Flash is a jock. Probably better off, probably has a lot of money, has a nice car. By the looks of it, has a realistic shot of making the NFL. Now look at Peter. He's smart, not very tall, and looks like he weighs a buck 25 soaking wet. Looking at the three of them without the filter of movie magic, it would almost seem certain that Mary Jane would choose Flash over Peter. So why is it the other way around? The answer is, well, movie magic. Part of the reason lies in the screenplay because it's as simple as it was written to be that way. But why do we feel that Peter and Mary Jane ending up together is an acceptable reality? That, my friends, is a mixture of the screenplay and the power of the edit. Thesis plus antithesis equals synthesis. This film theory will often take two things seemingly unrelated, link them together, and then a new idea will form that will then show how they are related. Simply put, this idea, plus how the film was edited, makes us feel like Peter and Mary Jane ending up together is a justified and acceptable reality. But there's one film theorist that would not agree with that outcome. Bazin. I hate to burst your bubble if you thought this was going to be about Spider-Man, but it ain't. This was all just a long-winded introduction to the film I will talk about before sunrise. This film is a romance movie, but not in the same vein as, say, The Notebook or You've Got Mail. Why? Because it feels more real and intimate. The art of life is to live in the present moment. Emmett Fox. This short but powerful quote, to me, encapsulates Bazin's viewpoint on filmmaking. Boiled down to a basic non-film enthusiast understanding, he'd rather have a moment or an event rather than just refer to it. This means none or little to no editing. To Bazin, editing takes you out of the moment and reminds you, the viewer, that you're watching a film. He'd want the film to imitate life, and that's where Before Sunrise comes in. Jesse and Celine are two strangers that meet on a train and fall in love with one another. Richard Linklater does indeed use thesis plus antithesis equals synthesis, but he does it differently. Instead of this film being filled with reverse shots to get the synthesis, he lets the scenes play out. I checked my watch several times at the beginning of certain scenes to see how long it would be to the next cut. Several times it was over 2 minutes till we got a reverse shot, and then another 2-minute shot would start. I'd love to share my two favorite sequences with you. The first one is 20 minutes into the film. At this point, we know enough about the two of them that we, as viewers, could call them acquaintances if they were real people. Here's where the fun begins. Jesse and Celine get onto the back seat of a trolley in Vienna. They are beautifully framed by its back windshield. It's at this point where they start to know each other more by playing 20 questions. But we don't cut. For the next 6 minutes. This whole time we're learning about their first time being sexually attracted to someone, and if they've ever been in love. We start to get to know them both intimately. We see Jesse falling for Celine in a quick, awkward moment when he wants to push her hair back. When she's bending down and it covers her face, he reaches out to do it, but he doesn't. But what Bazin would really love about this sequence is that the windshield isn't completely covered. We see life happening on the streets of Vienna. We see cars turning and changing lanes, people running to the bus stop. We see real life happen around the protagonists as they start to grow more intimate with one another. And this sequence ends with them getting off the trolley and going into a record store. Now, this next bit isn't the trolley one-take sequence, but I tied this next semi-long take to it. They grab a record by Kate Bloom and go into a listening booth. They pop the record in and listen to Come Here. This semi-long take is the synthesis of them talking on the train and the antithesis of the trolley sequence. They listen to this love song, and we see each of them look at the other, and then look away as the other begins to look at them. We see them both realize in the listening booth that they're starting to fall in love with one another. Sure, all of this could have been done in a more traditional way, like establishing shot, medium shot, reverse shot style. But it would not have felt as intimate or organic, in my opinion. Later in the film, we see them spend their final few hours together, laying under the stars talking. This scene isn't a 6 minutes long single take like the trolley sequence. There are reverse shots in it, but they fit with Bazin's theory. We get this whole moment with Celine and Jesse. The scene is around 6 minutes long. We see Jesse adjust himself and wet his lips while Celine shares with him how much this time they've spent together means to her. We get this beautiful exchange between the two about regretting that they only have that one night and how much they want many more nights together. Again, like the trolley sequence, the beauty of what happens in this scene is that the scene is how it is. Everything that makes this scene special would have been lost in a more standard way of filmmaking. After I watched this film for the first time, I was wondering why I felt the way I felt about it. Roger Eberts of RogerEberts.com hit the nail on the head with this part of his review of the film. Before Sunrise is so much like real life, like a documentary with an invisible camera, that I found myself remembering real conversations I had experienced with more or less the same words. While I was thinking that Bazin would have loved Before Sunrise, I came to the conclusion that Podofkin probably would have absolutely hated it. At really no point during my viewings of Before Sunrise I felt I was being forced to see how the director wanted me to see the movie. Everything that Linklater did made it feel organic, made it feel like it was there, like Ebert said, an invisible camera, like a real-life documentary. Where Podofkin would have chopped up many of the sequences, he probably would have utterly destroyed the trolley sequence, which I love, into something that loses all of its beauty and everything that makes it so special. I can count on both of my hands the number of times that there is a cut that implies more than a few minutes. At the very most, an hour has passed since the previous cut. You spend literally the entire time of the movie with them in essentially real time. Thank you for listening to me talk about one of my favorite films of all time, Before Sunrise.